Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. Matt, Claysburg had a tough loss on Friday. You guys went into overtime. What are your thoughts on the game?
It was a heartbreaker. You know, when we went into the game, we knew from doing film work in the last couple of years that Tussey Mountain was going to be a physical team, and we knew that we had a really good scouting report on them of their tendencies. We felt pretty comfortable. And for the most part, I felt like we did a really good job of keeping them in check offensively. But what ended up happening was couple breakdowns. Just all of their touchdowns were off of really big plays. You know, it was like there was the one that was a real dagger. Was they had like an 80-yard run. It got called back. I was like, all right, good. And then they basically ran the exact same play the next play, and we still just didn't step up and make the tackle that we needed to. When you look at how things played out, it was a tale of two halves, because the first half we threw the ball really well, and starting in the third quarter, our quarterback got hurt, and we had to kind of change what we were doing scheme-wise to kind of match the younger quarterback, and just ran out of time at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was going to say there were a couple big plays that stood out to me. Whenever you guys got the tipped ball that was caught for a touchdown to go up, it was like 26 to 6, I think was their score at that time. And then I think the next drive was whenever they broke the long run, like you said. Your offense got the ball and immediately fumbled.
Yes.
Which put them right in position, and then just like that, a 3-score game became a 1-score game.
Yeah, and you know, when we had that score, it was like, I thought, we're getting all these lucky breaks, but we need to keep scoring. We have to, and if we get one more stop, and I remember saying this to my assistants, was like, if we can hold them this drive and get one more score, I feel like that'll be enough that Tussey will start to give up, and it'll be the end of it. And they ended up going down and scoring. It was like, we got to go, and just had a tough time digging ourselves out, you know.
Yeah, it was tough. It seemed like in the third quarter, no one was moving the ball at all. And so you knew that everyone came out of halftime prepared.
Well, and we got pinned deep off of the opening kickoff, and we ran a quarterback sneak to give us more room. They blitzed, and we ran by it perfectly. I mean, it was like we knew what they were going to do. We had the right call, and just unlucky play. Quarterback got his leg rolled up, and we're waiting to see how long he's going to be out now. But when he came out, it was a combination of, we knew our quarterback was younger, and I knew that they were going to bring all kinds of pressure. So it was like, well, what do you do to try to take some of that pressure off? We threw some screens and tried to throw some quick game, but in the end, we just needed to just establish the run and just get the ball, start playing some inside-outside games, and we were able to string together some longer drives, but just couldn't capitalize.
Well, hopefully it's a learning experience for your guys, and your quarterback's ready to go next week. And hopefully you guys can get a win and rebound from that loss.
Absolutely. It's a long away trip this week. So, always going over to Southern Huntington's a tough place to play, because we have such a long ride going over that hopefully we're focused. We have a half day school, so it's a change in routine, and trying to just keep them focused and ready to go.
Well, good luck. We'll be checking in next week, see how that game goes.
Thank you.
Get on to the NFL now. Pittsburgh, able to get the win against the Broncos. I don't think that it was a pretty win. I mean, the Broncos had their quarterback knocked out, and their backup comes in and moves the ball. And it was to the point where Pittsburgh sometimes they had no answers. There were a couple turnovers. I think Ben had a bad interception. And the one thing that stood out to me were the penalties. Pittsburgh, 10 penalties for 89 yards. At some point, you got to clean that up, especially when the Broncos only had 4 penalties the entire game. and that's how they're able to keep it close. I was just shocked at how the defense struggled in the second half, because normally at halftime you make your adjustments. I know it's a new quarterback. You don't have a lot of film on him, but it's the NFL. Like, you should be able to put the pressure on, and the Steelers didn't do that, which scares me going forward whenever you have a dynamic offense in Baltimore that you're going to have to play twice. And so I was shocked to see, I think it was one of the Pittsburgh newspapers had an article about key players on the defense. I thought the defense, they were the ones that would have blew that game with a new quarterback coming in. Easily should have been shut down. I mean, especially whenever you come from the first game where you did that against the Giants and you think, wow, this could really turn things around, having a solid defense that we talked about. And then against the Broncos, you're at home and you go and just totally throw that out the window. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised to see that they were able to pull it out, and they're doing it the way that they are. I mean, the penalties are something that I've just kind of grown to deal with over the last couple of years from Pittsburgh, because that just seems like that's just a style of, with the youth movement that they have, with bringing in some of these younger players and replacing veterans, that they're going to have those mistakes. And I think that that's something that you're going to see going forward, because they didn't have those preseason games and some of the other extended times to have stuff ready to go.
Yeah, and that's something that we're going to have to see going forward from them if they're going to continue to make a push. Luckily right now, first in the division, tied with Baltimore. It's only been 2 games. But the one thing that stands out in the division, Pittsburgh has won by a difference of 15 points. Baltimore's won their 2 game by a difference of 49 points. So just in terms of offensive firepower, Baltimore's head and shoulders above Pittsburgh right now. And so they need to rely on that defense. And if you don't get that, that's where you're having issues. Because Baltimore, they have the highest differential in the NFL. And so you're going to have to play them twice, potentially 3 times in a playoff scenario. And so got to get that taken care of. A big game against the Texans coming up. They showed some stuff in their game, still finished with a loss, so they're 0-2. How do you feel going into that one?
I mean, I kind of feel the same as I have, is that as long as Ben's a quarterback, they have a shot. And he's going to make plays, and he really does look like he spent a good bit of time working on his rehab. That it looks like he's still making the throws like he has in the past, and I think that's going to kind of bail them out and keep them in games.
This is the tightest spread the Steelers have had all year. 4 points. They're the favorites going in. The game's in Pittsburgh again. I'm hoping that they build off that home win and are able to put the Texans away early and not get the Broncos and let them back into the game, because I think that's going to be the key. Houston seems to have trouble getting out the gate, and you don't want to let them get hot. But
well, I will say, specific to Pennsylvania, they overturned Governor Wolf's decision about fans, and now it's going to become something that's going to be up to the schools, and it could be something that, even as far as like the profession up through the college and professional teams in Pennsylvania, of it'll be up to them to allow fans in the stands. So you could potentially see a return as soon as this weekend of people having fans allowed in the games.
And I've been wondering about that, because I talked with a season ticket holder over the weekend, and there hasn't really been any communication from the Steelers. So you really don't know what games they're going to be in and how they're even going to divvy those tickets, because there were already a wait list for season tickets. Now, if you open up at a reduced capacity, what do you do to, stay loyal to your fans, try to keep it fair and allow people to come in and get those tickets as they need. Because that's one of the things that I know, just talking season ticket holders, they're starting to get antsy. So they definitely want to get an answer soon. And I think the Steelers had clocked in that these two games, the Broncos and the Texans, were for sure without fans. I think it's too short of a timeline for them to turn that. Although, I will say this, I wonder if they could easily do that. Because if you're putting in a reduced capacity crowd, it should be very easy to go ahead and say, all right, these are our 1,000 most loyal fans. Let's start small and get something going this weekend if we can. And you send out that email, or, people that get reached by mail, which I know a couple season ticket holders that still do that, they're going to be in trouble, because I don't think the Steelers would go through the trouble of trying to overnight tickets, because you don't know who's going to show up. I would think that you would almost immediately have to do it digitally, and you would have to go ahead and try to jump out as fast as possible. But I don't see a problem with thinking, like, why don't they go ahead and just put out, these are our season ticket holders, this is what's going to happen, and go from there. And if they don't get a yes or a no, move on to the next group, You're working with such a small crowd that any noise in the stadium is going to be beneficial to the home team. What are your thoughts on that?
My initial thought, and it's been consistent, is if you're a season ticket holder and you want to go, why should there be any restrictions? You know that there's a risk of potentially contracting. If we're being honest, not just coronavirus, but just about any virus, by being at a public sports event where there's going to be other people. And, you look at stuff like, just going to a gas station or something. There's people that refuse to wear masks and refuse to follow any of the safety precautions. So that there's always going to be some form of risk out there. If you want to go to a sporting event, you should be able to. And just knowing whatever the risks are, I just feel like the only thing that I would put in is I don't want to see a situation where, like, I'll just say you're a season ticket holder and you go to the game. I don't think that you should be able to go to the game, and then if you were to contract coronavirus, be allowed to turn back around then and go, oh, it was the Steelers' fault that I got this. Like, you went there knowing that there was the potential of being out there, and there's no reason that you should be able to sue the Steelers, the NFL, the city of Pittsburgh, whatever other people you want to try to sue out of it, to make a quick buck. Just like I think for the fans that are supporting high school and colleges, you should be able to, if you want to go, you should be allowed to go. It should be up to the individual person to determine what's safe for them and what guidelines they want to follow.
And that's something that I'm surprised that the NFL is fining coaches about, because, like, they're supposed to be doing these rapid tests. And so you're telling me that the tests aren't working? Because they fined both John Gruden, Sean Payton last night for not having their mask on the entire game. But yet, aren't they supposed to be testing them before the game to let them know if they're allowed to come in the stadium?
Yes.
So you're telling me that, number one, the testing's not working. And like, number two, it's not a safe environment. Like, if they have to wear the masks. Because it's not like the players are wearing masks. So why are you singling out the coaches? Maybe it's like some type of virtue signal thing where they want to be like ahead and say, like, look, we don't want the PR backlash. But they could also say, like, hey, no, we're at the forefront. We have the best tests. They're coming back negative. They've been on point. Our guys don't need masks. Because, I mean, like, you see across everything, media people don't have them on when they're doing interviews, and they once the cameras are on, they put them on. So they're just wearing them for show. So, I mean, coaches, they're basically doing the same thing. Otherwise, why are you testing? And then number two, like, why are you playing the games if it's not that safe? Because, like, the mask only protects the players. Like, coach is getting nothing out of that other than having a tougher time to communicate with the players. So, like, I don't understand why they're, I mean, it's like $100,000 fine. Like, it's not like a small $1,000 fine. Like, they're going after them.
Well, they went after the coaches, and it was a combination, I think, if I'm not mistaken, of they find the coaches and then they find the teams.
Yeah. And at that point, I think it's ridiculous because are the tests not real then? Because I thought that earlier. Whenever they sent them to a second lab, remember? They all came back positive, and then immediately every single person in the NFL is negative. Like, if that's true, why are they wearing the masks?
Yeah.
Like, you're testing them. You're supposed to be testing them as they come in before the game. And then, like, I don't even know what time the players have to get there and how fast these test results are. But, I mean, obviously, that's a lie. Because then, like, why? I mean, they're finding out a couple days later that, like, a crew member at Kansas City or something had it, and some of the fans or whatever that are there. I could see that scenario making the fans have it because that would directly impact your coach and your team. But why attack the coach? It just doesn't make sense to me because there are other things that you can go ahead and try to point out or take care of. But that's the one thing, like the NFL, if you're going to let fans in or whatever, like, be consistent. And I just don't see the point of going after the coaches for that. They made fun of Andy Reid's mask during the broadcast for one of the games.
Well, I saw that was the first week because it was all fogged up.
Yeah, they're actually using it during the broadcast this week. I forget which game it was, but they had mask vision where they had like a fogged mask on the screen and they were like writing stats in it or something. And I thought, that's ridiculous.
Well, I thought he got something from the NHL where they have like the anti-fogging stuff to help.
Well, the entire mask was supposed to be anti-fogging because they were using something too with people with glasses too. But like, obviously, it doesn't work. So if the hockey has ones that don't, I mean, I guess hockey would be the ones that would have one. But I don't know. The NFL, I mean, our boy Gruden, speaking of that game, big win. That was a gigantic win.
What's their record now?
2-0.
2-0.
Getting ready for the Chiefs. Right there. I don't know who they play next. It was the move to Las Vegas. That's what it is, Matt. There's no sin there to distract the players.
That's right.
No, they play the Patriots at New England. So that's going to be a big test. Well, speaking of New England, what were they doing? Did you watch the end of that game? They had Cam Newton drive them all the way down. And is Steve Belichick, is he the offensive coordinator? Because how did he get that job?
Defensive coordinator.
He's defensive? Well,
Family business.
They kept showing him. He had a mullet. I said, that's what you needed. If you had a mullet like that. He obviously doesn't care. That just shows confidence. If you walk into the coaching room with a mullet, you have to be prepared. Like, look at Mike Gundy, Matt. These are all classy guys.
Yes, look at him.
But back and forth, New England drives all the way down, and I think, okay, they have Cam Newton. You think that they would do a rollout where he has a passing option? They did it earlier in the game, and the guy was wide open. Nope. What'd they do? With like 3 seconds left, they just ran a quarterback like sneak up the middle from shotgun. It was like a 2-yard loss. No options, nothing. Like, you have Cam Newton. Spread him out. Why are you running him right into the pile? Are you trying to get him hurt? New England did it like 5 times in the game. I mean, it worked one of the touchdowns early, but I thought, why are you putting him in a position to get injured? Like, is he calling the play and he said, you know what, I'm just running through there? Because that would be one thing if he audibled into that. Maybe he did. I don't know. But all I'm saying is give the man a chance to run. I mean, just like even like an option look where he can hand it off and then run to the pylon. And if they're going to pursue him, flip it to the tight end in the back of the end zone. A cornerback's not going to tackle Cam Newton. He's gigantic. It's not like a slow Ben Roethlisberger that's 50 years old by now.
But I think also take into consideration what Cam Newton's doing. This is like they're tailoring part of it to what he did in Carolina and what he did at Auburn. That's part of who he is. Like he runs a different style of quarterback run type system than Lamar Jackson does. And like where Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray are more in space, like Cam Newton plays that physical between the tackles style of just cannonballing like Tim Tebow.
And that's what Tim Tebow also had options. They did that tight end jump pass how many times at Florida? Because they were always putting him at the edge. You always aim him at the tight end. You don't just run him up the middle like he's the fullback. I know they're getting an extra blocker in there, but it's the last play of the game. New England was one poor play call away from doing or going 2-0 with Cam Newton. And to be honest, they should have do the tight end pop pass. I didn't see them throw that, but they are running the old Auburn style where he'd run in there with their big running backs that they had when he was there. But I mean, come on, put him on the edge a little bit. I'm not saying like he just runs a quarterback sweep like he's Alex Smith back in the 49ers days, but put him on the edge and give him an option to pass because it was wide open earlier in the game. He ran right at the linebacker. The linebacker had to pick. He came up because he knew, well, Cam's going to run me over probably. So it's going to be a touchdown either way. Maybe the pass will be dropped. So that was the thing that stood out to me. New England has completely shifted that offense to be built around Cam Newton. And they're just like letting it die. Because if they would have innovated that at all, New England would have won that game. And I'm not taking anything away from the Seahawks. Because my man Russell Wilson is doing outstanding. But in New England, they could be a scary team with Cam Newton. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying like people were thinking, oh, now we get to find out if it was Belichick or Brady. How about it's both? How about they're just both great guys? Like one's a great quarterback, one's a great coach. End of story. I mean, anyone could see that from whenever Tom Brady was injured before. I mean, Belichick would continue to win without him. And then what? Tom Brady comes back and puts him over the edge with Super Bowl wins. It's not like they were winning Super Bowls without him. But, I mean, did he really have a quality quarterback whenever he was out? Garoppolo? Possibly. I mean, he got injured. Speaking of injuries, this week was crazy. Saquon Barkley out. My man Christian McCaffrey out. Bad week. There was a ton of guys that just got injured, and that's just typical football injuries, which again goes back to my coronavirus testing thing. If they have this many guys missing just with injuries, could you imagine if tests are coming back positive and they had people sit out? Like we would be looking at a skeleton crew coming in week 5. And maybe we still will be. I don't know. Did you see that?
I did. And you know what? This is what I thought. If you were listening to our show over the last couple weeks, you would know exactly we predicted this was going to happen. They got rid of all the preseason games. And with the big layoff, I said it was going to be similar to the year that they had the lockout. Exactly what happened. You can say that the technology's gotten better and that, with using some of the video workouts, that players were having access to, their own personal workouts and different stuff, that it was like, hey, you can say all you want about that stuff working, but there's something to be said about working out with the team at the facility and getting that stuff in that you can't replicate anywhere else. And here you go again, where guys are getting injured left and right.
Yeah, and that's a big deal because if the injuries continue, and like I said, if they start to get any test positive once things start to cool down, which is what the big theory is, everyone thinks that when the weather gets cold like the flu, coronavirus cases will pick up, and it's bound to just get people that aren't stayed at home. I mean, look at the college. We'll get into that in a little bit here. But if that starts happening to the NFL, I'm starting to worry that combine injuries, combine that, because if they go the entire season without anyone testing positive, it's fake. Like, I'd just say that. Like, their tests weren't real, Matt. Because, like, there's too many people there to just have it not happen. Like, you can't tell me that these are adult guys that they're not doing anything. Like, it's impossible to go home and stay in your bubble as cases keep continuing to rise. But we'll see. It's still early. I mean, they've had the testing in place, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a lot of these players have already had it and you can't get it again.
Possibly.
I mean, look at LSU. That, like I said, Coach O was saying, like, yeah, our team's pretty much already had it off the cuff. Basically saying, like, yeah, remember when we had those workouts and we didn't tell everyone that our entire team was sick? Like, yeah, they all got sick together. That was in June. We're hoping they don't get sick again because we're still waiting, but we pretty much just gave ourselves herd immunity. So maybe the NFL did the same thing. Maybe that's why players were trying to opt in and out. Because you know if they did that, they would be signing their life away. Which, who's going to pass up $1 million? Right?
Right.
So maybe that's why they canceled the preseason game. It was like, all right, here's your immunity month. Let's play some football. Because that's, like I said, that's the only way. If no one tests positive the entire year, I'll be shocked. But maybe August was immunity month. I don't know. That's just speculation. But looking around the league, anything else stand out to you?
I think, you've kind of joked about this the last couple of years, but I feel like Drew Brees is finally starting to show some chinks in the armor now that Michael Thomas is out, that he really looked like he was struggling last night.
Oh, yeah, he threw that one interception. Wasn't even close. I don't even know what he was looking at. He rolled out, it was like right to the linebacker. There was no one within 10 yards. Like, he just pretty much could have just handed it off to him. Just like, hey, I need a break here. Just take this real quick. That's basically what he did. I don't remember what the scenario was, but I saw that and I thought, oh, Drew Brees looking bad. And so there were a couple other throws that got away from him that kind of just put his team in a position that was going to be rough. And then they had the lead. They let Las Vegas get back into it. Weird to say Las Vegas, but they let the Raiders back into it. And obviously went the other way for them. Weren't able to get that win. And now, the NFC South, the division that I thought was going to be tough, the Falcons have looked like shit. They came out and said that they're not doing any changes. They're going to ride with it. Maybe they're trying to get Trevor Lawrence. I thought the Lions were going for that with the way they've been playing, but
that onside kick might have. How do you not just fire everyone associated with the Atlanta Falcons?
It was perfect, Matt.
They just that was like something like my heart hurt because I feel like that would be something that would happen to me. Where like you practice it all week and you're like, guys, just recover the onside kick, and they're just like, no, we're just gonna just let them just have it.
That I forget who it was. I think it was like 87 or something. He let himself get boxed out. He just stood there and he had the perfect chance when it was 9 yards out to just fall on it. Instead, he was just behind the guy, letting him get it. I was like, I watched it like so many times and it just made me angry. Like, what are you doing? Like, you got to show some initiative out there. At least if you realize, holy crap, they're in a great position here. I better jump in there. But they didn't even do that.
Yeah.
It was so slow, too. It was like a slow motion.
It was like
and you knew it was going to be a easy recovery. But at first I didn't think it went 10 yards, but I mean, they played it perfect. Let's see what else. I really don't have anything else for the NFL. Titans are looking good. Steelers play them in 2 weeks. They got to get the Texans win. They got to get it. Because as they go through that division this year, in Jacksonville, they were looking all right. They end up losing. So, I don't know. The big thing's going to be with this year, who's going to get that number 1 draft pick? And are they going to take Trevor Lawrence? Because you got a couple always contenders in Miami, the Jets, Bengals. They already went through that last year. They need to just get over it. Who else we got here? The Lions. Surprisingly, the Vikings. Maybe Carolina. I think that Carolina is going to end up turning it around because it looks like they're close. But McCaffrey out and Bridgewater looked like he got hurt. So I don't know what they're going to be doing. They're going to be buried deep in injuries here, and possibly they could be on pick number 1 watch, which, real quick as a note for Major League Baseball, I don't know if you saw this. This is the most Pirates thing ever to happen. Major League Baseball is considering getting rid of just using the records this year for their draft. Did you see this?
No.
They want to combine last year's record with this year whenever they're seeding for the draft. Such bullshit. Such bullshit. That's the only word that would describe this scenario. Because if you're looking through the standings, Pittsburgh, guys, they'd have the first pick. Let's be honest. 278 right now winning percentage. I joked about them hitting 18 wins. They might not. They crushed my record of 12 by hitting 15 so far. But by adding in last year's record, it would bump them to like the 5th or 6th pick. So they would go from overall number 1. And to be honest, like, why? Are they trying to keep a team out? Are they trying to stop Boston from getting a top draft pick? Because realistically, last year's record's already counted for the draft. There's zero reason to bring them into it. I know it's only a 60-game season, but hey, you're saying that the 60-game season is real enough to have a champion. Why wouldn't it count for the draft picks? I don't know. I'm baffled. Because they're like saying, oh, yeah. Of course, it's a real World Series champion. If they change the draft thing, immediately you have to add an asterisk to the World Series. Because you're saying that, okay, season doesn't really count because we didn't play enough games, but here's our champion of our weird extended playoffs thing. Like, okay, no one cares. So that was my one random baseball rant. Do you have anything else for football or for the NFL, we'll say, or Major League Baseball?
No. We're good.
Because that's the one thing that it just annoyed me. And I guess we can use that as a kind of an intermission. Did you see the NBA is getting ready, Matt? LeBron is going to be playing in that finals probably. They're yelling Kobe after their 3-pointers in the game.
Good for them.
And then Boston's battling back against the Heat. Will a Lakers-Celtics series save the NBA TV ratings? That's my question.
No.
You don't think
because
so?
Because in a totally processed situation, the Sixers let Jimmy Butler go. He signs with the Heat, and he's going to bring the championship back to Miami.
Miami might be a better story for the NBA, just in terms of the LeBron connection and getting viewers. Because LeBron kind of just moved on from there. He went back to Cleveland, and everyone was saying like, oh, he wouldn't have been able to win without Dwayne Wade. And then LeBron was complaining that he wasn't voted MVP. Like, seriously, LeBron, do you want to be MVP? Then go play with nobodies. Like, you've been putting yourself on super teams for the past decade. Seriously, like, when was the decision? That was like 2000, like 8 or 9, wasn't it? Maybe it was later than that, 11.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's close to 10 years. You've been putting on yourself on teams that are stacked. What's MVP about that? Like, he isn't even performing like Golden State has. Like, Golden State was clear number 1 seed, all this other stuff. Like, the Lakers haven't been playing like that with him.
No.
They've had their ups and downs. Like, you couldn't just say, like, Lakers are runaway favorites, like Golden State has been the past couple years. So, like, what would make me pick him for MVP?
And I think that was a difference, too, with Golden State, because they were a pretty good team to begin with. And then adding Durant on top of it was like the over the top, like clearly going for the championship type move. And there's not a lot of those where LeBron's building these super teams and then he's elevating everyone else around him. It's like all these other guys go with him and then they need to rely on like the Chris Bosches to have good games to win it for him.
Like, I'm just looking back at the list. I mean, LeBron won 2 MVPs with the Heat. Looks like he might have went there at least by the 2011 season because Derrick Rose won one before. I don't know where he was. And then he had some with Cleveland. Like, the Cleveland ones were very clear. He was the best player on the team. The only reason they were winning was him. After that, I mean, Durant won with Oklahoma. He only had Westbrook on that team. Then Steph Curry, he elevated Golden State and won 2 MVPs. Then when Durant left, Durant never won another one. They actually gave it to Russell Westbrook because he kept Oklahoma City going. James Harden brought Houston up. And then Giannis brought up Milwaukee. Like, that's it. LeBron hasn't, like, what has he elevated? Those other guys were all elevating their teams to levels that weren't that high before they got there. Like Golden State before Steph got there, no one took them seriously. And LeBron hasn't done that. He's just jumped the teams that were already competing or that where he was able to bring in a cast to bump him up. And as I looked that up, TV ratings for that Lakers Nuggets, a 17-year low. So even with Lakers and LeBron, it's not good. So we'll see how that goes. But I hate to get on a rant for the NBA, but I just wanted to bring that up because normally we wouldn't even be talking about them, but because they're in the middle of their finals, now the big discussion for the NBA and the NHL, when did they restart? Because their original plan was like in December. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. I think the NHL, they were saying like next year's going to be messed up as well. If that's messed up, wouldn't that also mess up the following season? Like how many years are going to be messed up because of this?
Oh, it's going to take years to get back in the swing of things.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Stars were going to get swept, if I'm being honest. And they came out and just shut Lightning down the first game. Lightning were able to tie it up. But you're getting 2 teams that, I mean, the Lightning I would have picked as a possible cup team. I would never would have picked Dallas. So we're kind of getting a unique Stanley Cup Finals, but I wonder if it's just because their goalie's getting hot and they had the time off to get people rested. But now what's going to happen? You start to push back other finals, going back to like the NBA with LeBron. He's getting up there in age. How many other runs is he seriously going to have before he just turns into Shaq at some point? And is just like a veteran that's just kind of floating around trying to sign for a team to sell jerseys or whatever. Because if he leaves LA, I don't know, like where else could he go? He go back to Cleveland again? They're not going to compete. He's at the point where he's going to need to bounce to another contender.
Well, I think what he'll end up doing is he'll just end up just doing 1-year deals until his son gets drafted, and then he'll just sign with whoever drafts him. And it'll be this big marketing thing of once I'll wait, and then whoever ends up with that pick, he'll just sign with, and that'll be the end of it.
And not to single out just the NBA for TV ratings, the NHL, their ratings are also awful. So they're down 28%. And remember how I was saying that everyone was attacking the NFL? Like the NHL and the NBA are both completely down because now you're up against the NFL and college football. It hasn't even been the good college football games yet. Each week there's only like one or two matchups that are, I would say, would draw a considerable casual crowd. So I think this week, which we'll be getting into with the SEC stuff, is going to be the first week where you're going to have big time matchups. And we'll see how the college football ratings look after this one. But I mean, with the NBA and the NHL both down, when their series are done, I'm going to bring it in and we'll talk about it on the show because you're looking at, you canceled because you didn't want to play in June. Like I said, just bring back and start the playoffs in June or July. You waited and now your ratings are so bad. Why? You ruined your next season entirely. At least with the NFL, you just canceled preseason. It looks like they're starting. Let's see what happens, but it's going to be crazy. Speaking of those, like TV ratings, getting into college football now, Notre Dame canceled Wake Forest, their game because Notre Dame had a ton of cases this week. They tried to keep it under wraps at first by just saying like they had a couple players that had it. And then it got so bad that they had to cancel practice, which of course they had to cancel the game or postpone it, whatever they're going to do. And now the ACC, they're going to be in trouble in terms of scheduling because you already have Virginia and Virginia Tech. They haven't played. Notre Dame is going to get it. Are they going to let them play next week? Because the thing is, everyone was saying at the beginning of the season that you needed 2 weeks off or whatever so that you're not contagious anymore. This is going to be half a week. So they would almost have to move 2 weeks and you're going to push them back. I think the saving grace is that the Big Ten made what I consider the dumbest decision to try to schedule all of their games into a window that ends right before Selection Sunday. Like they waited until the last minute, kind of like playing a game of chicken to see if these other conferences were going to cancel. And then they, like you said last week, they said, nah, we got to try to get our money now. And instead of sitting back and saying, you know what, let's just play division games like I've been saying the entire time, they've now cut off one game. And now there's no breathing room. And to make matters worse, they're adding a 9th week, which is their de facto conference championship game, but they're slotting down so that the champions play, the East Division and the West Division champion, they play a game. Then you have East, West, number 2, they'll play a game. East, West, number 3, they play a game, and I think all the way down. I don't know if every team's playing or if some are going to be eliminated at that point, but they're setting up because they want to try to get into bowl selections or whatever. It's just nuts. I'd be shocked if they even had a lot of bowl games this year. Maybe I'm wrong. But like if you're going to be canceling half your year, because it only takes one for the Big Ten. One game and their entire year is ruined. Because like let's say like right off the bat, what if the Ohio State and Michigan game has to be canceled this year? And then you're having, or like it could be Penn State or Michigan, like whichever one. Let's say the Ohio State game, they don't play them. Ohio State goes undefeated. That other team goes undefeated. They never played head to head. Guess what? Now they're both going to have to, what are they going to do? They're going to flip a coin. They're both going to have to decide who's going to play against the West champion. And then who's going to get the bid for the playoffs. Like, did they just say, oh, Ohio State, we got to pick them? Like, that'd be dumb if we didn't, right? They're the most talented team. We don't want to let Penn State get in. That would be, to be honest, Matt, that's the most Penn State scenario that would happen. It's almost like whenever they won the Big Ten conference and they were like, oh, Ohio State, they should get in this year. They had one less loss. Come on, that's not fair. So Penn State was just happy by winning the conference. They were like, we're happy to be here, guys.
Well, yeah, because they knew that they were going to get smoked if they went in.
Yeah, but they really didn't. Ohio State got shut out that year by Clemson. Penn State had a competitive game against USC, which was very talented that year.
Shut your mouth.
That Clemson team smoked Ohio State so bad. You can't tell me that Penn State wouldn't have at least scored with their toss-it-up offense.
No.
And Saquon Barkley, yeah.
No, it would have been a beatdown. That's why they were like, no good, we're okay.
I could see it would have been possibly multi-score game, but they would have at least scored. It wouldn't have been that bad. Ohio State was one-dimensional that year.
Well, and to your point about the part of the Big Ten schedule, history has proven that it really hasn't happened all that often. So I think if you play your games, even with the loaded schedule, you're going to have your teams that are going to have their losses, and it'll naturally filter itself out. So I don't think you have much to worry about.
That's probably true. But again, like I'm saying, they set it up perfectly where you're going to play a couple games, an outbreak possibly is going to happen. It's happened in every conference so far that's played. You have that, when is the Ohio State, Penn State game? I don't know if these schedules are updated. But it's earlier in the year, I believe. And so if that's the game that gets canceled and both teams are sitting there undefeated, I know Penn State has to go to Michigan and they haven't won there. And I don't even know when they last won there. Wasn't even the Brady Hoke days because I was at that game. James Franklin lost. So I don't even know. But let's say you're getting ready to play them. It's Halloween. It's like week 2. If this is the updated schedule. That game very easily could be canceled. You go play one game. The next game they're like, okay, one team has it. We're not going to be able to play that game. And there's no way to to reschedule it. Both teams run the table. It's very doable. The one thing I have to agree with Nebraska, I know their athletic director has been getting a lot of flack about this. They were complaining about the schedule because they have to play both Penn State and Ohio State this year. And they were saying, can we get a break? I think they were trying to petition for the crossover games not to count, which would go ahead and, that would cut out some of the controversy because of the schedule. But Ohio State has by far the easiest schedule because they play Nebraska, who hasn't been good. And then their rival crossover is against Illinois. So what are they doing there? Penn State has to play Nebraska and they have to play Iowa. There's a pretty good possibility that Penn State could be slotted up with Iowa and have to play them twice this year. And same with Michigan. Michigan has to play Wisconsin and Minnesota. Let's just say Michigan beats Penn State because it's at home this year, and Michigan plays whichever team between Wisconsin and Minnesota. They're going to play them again at their end of week matchup. Ohio State plays the champ, and then Penn State gets a rematch with Iowa. Why are you playing all these rematches? It's a very real possibility that you could have 2 or 3 rematches that final week. Asinine. And for what reason? Because you decided that you might need 9 games to possibly get bowl eligible? At some point, just say hey, this is our thing, and as a conference, because the NCAA hasn't said anything, they could just say hey, if we're above 500, we're submitting our teams as bowl eligible this year. If they play 8 games, 4-4, that's the new 6-6, because 500 is a joke anyway. Wake Forest right now, they're 0-2 in the ACC. They get the Notre Dame game, let's say they can't make it up. Okay, try to get them to 500. They might not get there. They've already played NC State and Clemson. The NC State game was winnable. They couldn't get it done. But, it's not like they have to play Clemson again. Now you cross Notre Dame off, which is going to be one of the top teams in the division. There's a very real chance they could get to 500 if that game isn't played. Why not? And so I think the conferences should just say, like, hey, instead of being worried about playing this weird number of games, let's just say whatever our schedule is, if a team goes 500 and a bowl wants to pick them, go for it. Because like the Pac-12, they're looking at, now that the Big Ten took forever to announce, the rumor is the Pac-12 is going to announce a week or two later. I don't know if they ever did, because they were getting some governors to overturn some stuff. But they're only going to play divisions, which makes the most sense. They're going to be backed into a corner and they're going to play divisions, and watch them play like a full schedule. Although they waited too long though. They don't have the bye weeks built in. This all could have been taken care of weeks ago. And I hate talking about it. But I mean, just looking at the schedule from last week, there were how many postponed games? Like, let's see if I can get it up, because I think ESPN shows there were 5 games. One was canceled, Charlotte and North Carolina. The other ones were all considered postponed. But it's been about 5 games a week in college. 3 in week 2, 5-2, or 5-3. The first week there might have been 2, but there wasn't as many games. So, okay, my 5 is a little bit high. But we're going into week 4. I don't know how many are going to be postponed right off the bat. It looks like 1 so far. This is going to be the key week. The SEC's back. We got some great matchups. Mike Leach. We're going to see what he's doing. Lane Kiffin. What's he up to? These are games I want to see played. The rankings, though, is annoying me because now I don't know if a team's really ranked or if they're just faking it, Matt. What are your thoughts on that?
I really don't think it matters going into week 3 of the ranking season. I mean, you always have, and there's always a bias towards the SEC, and there's always an overinflated number of Big Ten teams that get in because they overvote for these people to guarantee that they have enough people close enough to push a handful of them into the bigger bowls. I mean, you look at how many times you have these overranked teams that they get in, and then it's just they don't do anything. They get hyped up, and then they end up losing out. And I'm just glad that we're having a season. So whether there's issues with rankings, it just, to me, it's kind of comical at this point.
I'm just looking at him, and I see a Louisville-Pitt matchup where both teams are ranked. And I just think back to the Big East days, and I think, is that a real ranking? Or is it just because they're left undefeated at this point in time?
Well, and I look at Pitt, and they've had almost all of their defensive starters returning. They have a lot of offensive. Like, this is a legitimate Pitt team this year. There's a reason that Penn State dropped them from the schedule, because they knew that with what they had coming back, they were going to be a tough draw. And, it just so happens that they're starting the season under a pandemic. And when you're looking at, like, would Pitt be ranked in a regular year? No, because you'd have to add Ole Miss, and you'd have to add Mississippi State, and you'd have to have Illinois and Purdue ranked, because you got to have Big Ten representation. So it would force a team like Pitt out, that they would just go, oh, it's Pitt. And are they going to end up losing to someone that they shouldn't in a couple weeks? Absolutely. They'll pull a Pitt move and lose to someone that they shouldn't, but I think that they have a good team right now, and they deserve to be ranked.
They could very well be in the mix of, hey, we're going to be in the conference championship, and if they get a game postponed, what do? Like, what if the Pitt-Notre Dame game gets postponed and they both finish with 1 loss? Both to Clemson.
Well, you know what'll happen.
Notre Dame gets it.
They'll push Notre Dame.
Because I don't know what the deciding factor is, but I'm looking at that. Notre Dame and Pitt are supposed to play October 24th.
The way they should look at it is with the point differential, and try to find some kind of other mutual factor. But unfortunately, for as much as that should be a common sense thing to look at some kind of statistic to gauge who the better team is. It'll be, well, Notre Dame will draw more. We'll put them in and we'll split the winnings, and it'll be driven by money.
That's what it will be.
Very negative and move that you would say. Very cynical.
But I will say, we know Pitt's not going to have a run like that.
They could run the Coastal. It's doable.
It's not the Coastal this year. Everyone's playing each other, remember?
That's right.
So they really don't have that luxury. And I think they dodged North Carolina. North Carolina is the other one that you're going to play through. I mean, you have the Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's getting ranked. We haven't seen them. It's not like they've looked good in past years. So, I don't know how to take that ranking. Same with, Kentucky. Auburn and Kentucky's a big ranked matchup. I half expect Auburn just to crush them. And then everyone's going to say, oh my gosh, they beat that ranked Kentucky team, Matt. Top 5. Let's get them up there. And then they'll be hyped for that Alabama matchup. And then if Alabama beats them down, then they'll be able to, jump up to number 1. Get the number 1 seed.
Right. And now you know how I feel whenever Michigan pounds Illinois. It's ranked 23rd. You're like, ranked win. That's a quality win. Put us in a playoff.
Hey, we don't know. We don't know how many ranked wins we have. There's a real possibility with Minnesota and Wisconsin on the schedule that over half our schedule is ranked, Matt. That's not even a joke, because Ohio State's going to be ranked, Wisconsin, Penn State, ranked. They only play 8 games. Minnesota is most likely going to be ranked. They're going to rank one of those other teams. They're going to rank or Indiana or something. Go ahead, put them in. Michigan State. For whatever reason, people are picking Michigan State to be a tough game for Penn State. Michigan State's coach quit randomly. He just gave up. Then their recruiting class tanked. They brought in another coach that hasn't been good as a head coach. Doesn't really have much experience, and yet that's supposed to be a tough game for Penn State. If Penn State doesn't blow them out by 35 or 40 points, I would be absolutely shocked. Michigan State should be a doormat this year. But to your point, let's see if they get ranked. There's nothing that says, look at their recruiting rankings. I don't know, did they do the blue chip ratio this year? It's been such a weird year. I don't know if they ever got that done because you don't know who the starting rosters are going to be. I guess for some teams it's probably filled out. I'll see if I can find it out. Or the updated team composite. I'll see if I can find that here. But there's zero reason that Michigan State should be a team to watch in the Big Ten. Maybe watch to get 3 wins, 2 wins. If they went 500, I'd be shocked because they're probably going to beat Maryland. Well, I don't even know. Maryland could be a toss-up. What's Loxley going to do? You got that and Rutgers. And then I don't know who their crossover game is. But they're not going to beat Ohio State. I saw someone said, is Michigan State have a chance to upset Ohio State? If they beat Ohio State this year and Michigan doesn't, they should just fire Harbaugh. That's what I'm saying. If Michigan State gets a win against Ohio State before Harbaugh does, just fire him right there. He could be playing somewhere else. He could just finish beating Penn State by 62 points. And they're like, hey, did you hear the news? Michigan State beat Ohio State, so you're fired. And then that should just be that. They'd be like, what? We're ranked in the top 5. He's like, no.
No.
That's it, son. You're done. But, any other things you have on college football?
Yes. Hopefully Mike Norvell got a hold of Hugh Freeze and he can figure out how to coach from the press box or from home and some kind of box because he contracted coronavirus. So he'll be coaching rivalry game against Miami, not on the field. And
that's true because that brought me back. I was actually going to bring that up, so I'm glad you brought it up. I figured you would. But I was waiting to see what they said in terms of the NFL coaches not wearing masks and stuff like that. And then you have the overall college game. Norvell, he's not even going to be allowed at the game. So you're going to be out of the stadium. Could you imagine in the NFL if they were like, Bill Belichick, you're gone for like 2 weeks. Like, I just don't see that would happen on that scale. And I'm actually proud of Florida State for doing something like that, because you have a lot of teams and stuff going through and everyone's saying like, okay, are these players actually safe? Are they able to put stuff in? And no one really knows. And then at the end, that's it. They just have like some coaches, some players like Notre Dame, like they get guys sick. We don't know. Florida State at least took a step and said like, hey, he's out, so he's not allowed to touch the players or whatever.
Yeah. And I think they used a lot of technology while he was out to be able to try to still have him have access to evaluating the players and being able to do some kind of activities with them that I thought, well, it kind of makes sense, and try to evolve the game a little bit where it's not ideal that he's not there, but at the same time, work with what you have to make it work.
Yeah, so we'll see. I'm surprised that Florida State hasn't looked better. Even looking at this talent composite, they're right behind Michigan at 16. Florida State is right ahead of Miami. So this Miami-Florida State game is going to be a big one. Because in terms of just keeping the top talent there, they're slated by the blue chip ratio as not being in contention. Either is Miami, though, but just in terms of like the talent from pure recruiting, and I don't know how up to date this is, just because a couple of the conferences haven't finalized like their roster, so I don't know if the Big Ten and even the Pac-12 teams would be legit. So there might be some moving, but right there, Florida State, they are clearly in second in the ACC in terms of talent. So if Norvell wants to turn them around fast, like, I wouldn't be shocked to see them go on a run. I know not being there is going to be a tougher task. But, I was a little bit negative on Michigan State. In terms of talent, they're sixth in the Big Ten, right ahead of Maryland and behind Wisconsin. And that brings me back to Nebraska. Nebraska's AD is complaining. They're fourth in the Big Ten. They're behind Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. Why can't Nebraska compete in the West again? Like, I was looking at that as a gimme win for Penn State and Ohio State. Scott Frost was supposed to turn them around.
But I think when you look at what Scott Frost is doing at Nebraska and what Norvell's tasked to do at Florida State, I think they're similar. The players aren't the same and the schemes aren't the same, but I think the task is the same. Because when Frost took over at Nebraska, what was Nebraska? They were legitimately nothing. Like, they'd gotten to a point where recruiting was bad. Like, they've been so far removed from national prominence of like being recognized as a reputable team that they didn't really have like the viewership to be able to go, oh yeah, we were a competitive team, where they had something to go off of, because they went through such a downward spiral that they were basically starting at ground zero. And so you're trying to get the right players in, and you look at what's happening in Florida State, and there's a lot of players that are like opting out and leaving, which majority of those guys are guys that Willie Taggart had originally signed. And so they're trying to push some of these guys out that were more, they weren't fitting the mold of what Norvell's looking for, or what Frost is looking for, and trying to build not just for one run, but to have the program be a continual success. And when I compare how you look at Norvell's Memphis teams and how they had the culture built within, and that's such a big thing that even all the way down to my team right now, everything that we do is focused on building the culture and building the understanding that it's not just something that you turn on Friday night and then turn off and go home. And I think it's tougher to have that mentality and that type of thing where kids buy in and want to be the leaders.
And that's something that he should be building. I don't know how many years has he been there so far? 2 or 3? I mean,
Yeah.
it should start to come through. And like you said, to your point, there were a lot of people opting out this year across the board. Like I think even I know Michigan's roster more than I do other teams, but Michigan's had like 3 or 4 guys just opt out because of the late start, and they don't want to put their NFL career in jeopardy. So I don't know if these ratings had that, like, you're going to lose top NFL guys. It's not going to be good going into the season with a new quarterback that Michigan's going to be rolling out there. But I don't know if these reflect that. But they have Ohio State at 80% blue chip ratio. Michigan and Penn State are tied at 59. That's it for the Big Ten. So like I said, if Ohio State misses either of those games because of the coronavirus, and whichever team wins the game, Michigan and Penn State, and they go undefeated, what's the Big Ten going to do? They're most likely going to pick Ohio State for the same reason we said about Notre Dame. They look at this and they say, yeah, we got this figured out. Like, it doesn't matter if they didn't play Penn State or whatever. Like, they're just going to sit there and they're going to say, all right, you're going to be number 2. And that's it. Because, like, same with the closer one's going to be Clemson's at 63. They're not that much further ahead of Michigan and Penn State, where both of those teams could make a jump. And even when Clemson won their first national championship, they haven't made that step. Like, they haven't made the jump to where they're in the top tier. The top tier is still Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. Then there's a huge drop-off where everyone else is in that tier, just in terms of recruiting. So Clemson's getting the bump because they've had solid quarterback play and they've had great coaching. And so that's where I think teams that need to, like you said, you have a system in place. Where's Scott Frost going to make that jump? You don't make the jump to that upper tier of recruiting until you have a run like Urban Meyer had at Ohio State, where he's able to bump them up. And that was built off of Jim Tressel coming in and having that set up. Georgia had the same thing where they had Mark Richt elevate them. Kirby Smart's had them there. I'm surprised, to be honest, that they haven't had some drop off just because they haven't been able to break through. I know they made the playoffs. And was that the national championship game? Did they beat Oklahoma? I can't remember that year. But I mean, they've been close, but they haven't been able to win like the SEC. At least I don't think so. I mean, Did they win it that one year? I can't remember. That one year was all messed up because like Alabama got in when they didn't. So maybe Georgia did win it that year and Alabama didn't play for it. Did Georgia beat Auburn or someone? Like, there was one messed up year where possibly they could have been in. But like every other team that's down in the mix is like Texas, LSU, Oklahoma, Florida. I mean, LSU won a national championship. Then the other ones I mentioned, Michigan, Penn State. Then you have like Auburn, Notre Dame. All the way at the bottom is Washington and USC, just barely over the line. So you have to go through almost all the other conferences' top teams before you get to the Pac-12. And so, like, if they don't play, I don't think the playoff will miss them.
No.
That's my ending note. You have anything else for the final bell?
No. Just watch some football. I mean, one of the benefits of being in a coronavirus year is that you have access to watching a lot of good games. So you can watch our game if you're not in the area. And if they continue to withhold fans because of stadium restrictions, just local decisions, you can still log in, be able to watch games from anywhere.
And that's a big thing. I've got to bring it off the top of the show, but I was able to embed Claysburg's live stream onto the Southbound Sports website. So if you signed in or you just went to the southboundsports.com, the game is right there. I kept it up. I don't know if you're able to view them after YouTube. I should have checked before we went live. But if you want to go through and see CKTV, go ahead and favorite that, subscribe that, and you'll be able to get the pop-ups with your YouTube account saying that they have a live stream going, and you can just jump on the Matt's game right there every Friday that they have a home game. If there's going to be a stream for an away game, I'll try to add it the same way, so you can just go to southboundsports.com and hopefully find it. I'm not guaranteeing it, but at the minimum, if I can find a link, I'll at least put a link up before the game. So usually you guys start at 7 o'clock?
Yep.
7 o'clock Friday night. So definitely go to southboundsports.com. Check that out. I tested it last week. I was able to stream the entire game on my TV straight from southboundsports.com using CKTV. So I know it's easy for people to find it that way. But definitely favorite them and you'll get the pop-ups right there. So check that out. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.